G'day and welcome to the Hunting Connection podcast. My name is Zach Williams and I am your host. Here we'll connect you with hunters, fishers and outdoor enthusiasts from around the globe. This podcast will share hunting and fishing stories, including past experiences, and tackle the tough hunting stereotypes our community faces. We hope to be a positive influence to those outside the community while also having a laugh along the way. Hope you enjoy the podcast. G'day and welcome to another episode of the Hunting Connection podcast. Today we have a very special guest. We have Calem O'Grady. How you going, mate?
How's it going?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good. Big day for you?
Yeah, a bit of a drive.
How many kilometres you travelled today?
I have no idea. About 200 maybe.
200? Nice. So you've been slowly making your way down from the territory.
Yeah.
Very nice. Bit cooler down here than up there.
It's about 40 degrees in the afternoon. It's pretty casual, yeah.
Perfect. I'm hanging for summer, especially to get out and go do some bow fishing.
It is crazy cold down here, isn't it?
Oh, it's been ridiculous and just wet. Like, it's not normally this wet this late into the year. So, yeah. Where are you from originally?
Originally, I'm from Bristol, which is a small harbour town in the UK.
So a very big jump from Bristol in the UK to Adelaide, South Australia, and Darwin, jumping back and forth.
Definite change in temperature, that's for sure.
I love seeing all the news articles when Britain has a 29 degree.
Hey, it was 40 degrees recently.
Yeah,
that's record temperature. Usually we get about a week of 25 degrees. In June, and that's it.
Yeah, you see all the, when it's 30, 35, everyone's freaking out. Yeah, that some people over there just can't cope with it. You see all the posts. Oh, don't use your aircon today because you'll kill the power.
Only 5% of people even got air conditioning in the UK.
Yeah, wow. No wonder.
Right.
So, how'd you find yourself over here?
Well, it was the beginning of COVID. It's crazy cold that was going around, and I was going to go to America. My girlfriend, who is Australian, who's been living in America for a lot of years, she was at her girlfriend's, or one of her best friends, was going out with a country singer, and he does pretty well in America, and he had a big ranch, and everyone was going to go there for this cold thing that was going on. I was going there, and then my ticket was cancelled by Trump. Decided to come to Australia because my visa was still valid. That was years ago now. 3 years ago?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. Second best option, but probably worked out just as well for you over here. So you came down with your girlfriend Kai, and you went straight to the Outback.
Yeah, so we arrived in Melbourne. We were thrown car keys by her family. Then we drove to mid-South Australia, to an area just outside of Peterborough. And yeah, lived in the bush for about 7 months. It's
a bit drier than you're used to out there.
It was in the middle of a drought as well. Well, the end of a drought, should I say. So it was, pretty barren.
And what was your sleeping arrangements when you first got there?
Fortunately, we stayed in a one-room stone hut with no running water or electricity. Fortunately, there was a rooftop tent on top of the CRV that we drove up in. And yeah, we literally slept in a rooftop tent, did everything in a one-room stone hut, and ate nothing but meat for 7 months.
How old is that little hut?
Well, it was an original settler's hut. It was originally for a family of 14.
That's insane.
The room was as big as this room, which is, probably 9 foot, 10 foot by 7 foot.
Yeah, you can imagine. There's I'm not sure if you've been there, but up in the Barossa, there's an actual tree up there that a family used to live out of. I think it's like a family of 14 in this big hollow gum tree. It's insane. So you come over here, you started living in the Outback to deal with the pandemic, and you found yourself filming the whole experience.
Turned into a TV show that we made that was pretty spectacular. So had a crew that isolated with us and followed us around on our exploits, mostly hunting goats. There's a lot of goat hunting that went on, for sure.
That's awesome. And were they used to that type of thing, the crew that came out with you guys?
No, they weren't used to that type of thing at all. So they had zero hunting or outback experience whatsoever. It was a crew of 3, and on one of our goat hunting expeditions at the time, there were a few small mobs. So in the Baker's Hills, which was about 4 or 5 k's from Stone Hut, there was a group of black goats. And at Buttermuck, which was our closest couple of k's away, there were a few nannies there, and they were elite. I mean, these guys had missed the muster for many years, and they knew what they were doing. They had the vision and wily senses of a deer. It was crazy. And one day we couldn't work out what was going on. You know, we were getting a bit close, and they were spooking, and then we managed to just in the distance see the massive white hat that the sound girl had on. And yeah, it was quite funny, just trying to get the shots like we're stalking, and they're like stood up running around and trying to film us from different angles, and we're just trying to explain the fact that this is not how it's done. We're not doing this for effect. You have to literally get down into the ditch with us.
What do you think of the goats' alert noise, that sneezing that they do when they're
that kind of annoyed sneeze that they do? Yeah, it's always a sign that you're going to probably go hungry tonight.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing. Like, you know, Samba deer in Victoria, they kind of honk, and then fallow does, they kind of bark at you, and then you've just got that sneeze that the feral goats hear.
Yeah, the outraged sneeze of the goat.
So how'd they deal with the whole being out? Hunting for food and...
Well, there was a farmhouse that was vacant they got to use, which was about 5 or 6 k's in the other direction.
That's good.
From us, which was nice for them. They just didn't eat around us for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And we didn't interact that much. I mean, it was a bit of a kind of fly on the wall thing. It was very authentic. You know, they just would come in the morning, ask us what we were going to do that day, and we would just do what we were going to do anyway.
So what's the name of this show, and where can people find it? I actually haven't watched it. I've been meaning to. I've seen all the clips that yourself and Kai share on Instagram and Facebook, but...
Well, it was called Outback Lockdown. Still doing the rounds. Depends on where you are. So if you're in America, it was Discovery Channel, North and South America. It's on Netflix in the UK. It aired on 7Mate and NITV, and it does the rounds occasionally on NITV. And it was on Amazon, but I'm not sure if it's still on Amazon now.
I'll have to...
But I think you can get it on 7Mate Catch Up or something.
Cool. I'll have to check that one out, because it was from what I've seen anyway, from all the clips that you guys shared and the stories and that, it looked very adventurous.
It was pretty epic, yeah.
So had you done any of that type of survival stuff?
Yeah, well, before? I was a chef originally. That was my first vocation. But in recent years, I've been a bushcraft and survival skills instructor. I've always had a passion for survival skills. The producers didn't know that, though. They weren't really aware. I think they thought that Kai, my partner, being a quite well-known, quite renowned survivalist, they were going to do a show that was going to be more the survivalist and her slightly scared English boyfriend. That was the kind
I could see why that would be appealing to watch.
100%. And then they got there, and then, you know, I'm making fires with sticks, and they had to change the dynamic. In fact, it was one of the producers who was adamant that it should go that way. Fortunately, the editors were the editors from Australian Story, and they put it together, and they did a good job.
That's good.
They had, yeah.
That's good. So, you covered you were a chef. How'd you get into that? Just
jumped into what I fell into. I just was young, got a job in a kitchen, with all the intentions of studying, and yeah, really enjoyed it and really enjoyed the lifestyle, and yeah, was a chef for best part of a decade, a bit more.
That's awesome. How do you find that, you know, doing a lot of hunting in that now and living off the land, how do you find that the skills from being a chef translate to...
100% transferable. 100%. I mean, it's just amazing to have a wealth of knowledge to fall back on when it comes to preparing your meals. It's great.
Yeah, I'm definitely no chef, so you had tea here tonight. I apologise. It was just jarred curry.
For everyone at home, it was spectacular venison curry.
You don't have to fool them. It's all good. It's just jar stuff. Chuck in the slow cooker before we leave for work. So
5-star.
So what do you do for work now?
So at the moment, I run my own business teaching survival skills, mostly to school groups, and I do some work with remote indigenous communities.
That's awesome. So how was the transition from doing the survival show to going up and doing all the survival skills stuff up in the NT and teaching?
It was a whirlwind thing, to be honest. I'd done a bit of work with a company out of Queensland, teaching survival skills, and the guy who owned that worked with a company called Camping on Country. It worked with men's physical, mental, and cultural health. So it's going out to remote indigenous communities and just bridging the gap between the older and younger generations, sharing bush skills and learning together. It's with an Aboriginal actor called and host called Ernie Dingo, and we go out, set up a camp in the middle of the bush, and he runs spectacular yarning circles where he talks to the men. It's men's business, men's business style. And I didn't know what to expect, but it was amazing how every time there was people opening up, and the stories were so deep and rich, and like at least one person every single camp would burst into tears. It was a wonderful experience.
I could imagine. And Ernie Dingo seems like, growing up, being in Australia, being the age I am, I grew up watching Ernie Dingo on TV. So he does come across as a very genuine person. So
it's literally, he doesn't have to act. It's just the guy he is. He's a wonderful, down-to-earth guy. I had no idea who he was. He picked me up from the airport, flew up to Queensland. We started from Cairns and made our way across the northern coast, visiting several communities. But when he picked me up, didn't know who he was. And it wasn't until we got to Port Douglas and tried to go to the market, and he was getting swamped, absolutely swamped, that I realised he was quite well known.
That probably was pretty good for him, like just being with someone who had no clue who he was.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We get on quite well because I think it's nice. He's so used to everybody treating him like Ernie Dingo.
Yeah, royalty. He is Australian royalty, even though you don't see him as much on TV as you used to in the early 2000s, late 90s. He is that cultural icon.
He's a busy man. He's older now, and he's got 5-year-old twin boys. So he's
got his hands full. I know what that's like with young kids, as you've seen tonight. They just run amok. So how did you get into hunting and fishing?
Well, actually, not many people know, but I was vehemently anti-hunting when I was... Well, I say anti-hunting. I wasn't really anti-hunting, and I don't think many people are actually anti-hunting. If you talk to people who say they're anti-hunting, they're not hardly ever anti-animals hunting. Even if you explain the fact that apart from obligate carnivores that hunt on their own and hunt animals that are of a similar weight and power ratio, a lot of animals don't even bother waiting until the animal's dead. There's no humane dispatch in the animal kingdom. It's not about that. And if you talk to them about, if you start talking about Maasai warriors hunting lions as a rites of passage, that's fine. The problem they have is with people who live in their communities, in their Western countries, hunting.
Pretty much white people trophy hunting. It's
the great white hunter smashing in, shooting everything that moves and leaving.
Yeah, I've had that argument many times with people that are like, oh, I'm okay with traditional hunting. I'm like, well, it is traditional for me. It's traditional for you wouldn't be here today if your ancestors didn't hunt.
100%. And that's another thing, that people think that as humans we should not get involved. I mean, recent evidence shows that the oldest fossil records are about 3.5 million years old. When did we stop requiring to hunt for food? Several hundred years ago? To say that we're not part of the animal kingdom just isn't true. And the effect of us jumping out when it comes to predator control and to manage species is amazing. It's amazing the detriment it is that people don't hunt more.
Yeah, just look at Australia with like land management and you being with indigenous communities, like the way they manage land. Like a lot of it was more so for hunting, but the benefits were there for the environment.
100%. Burn-offs clear the ground, making animals visible, but also it clears off the undergrowth. So you can see the new shoots. If you do a burn-off one night, you come back the next day and it's full of animals. It's a hunting tactic.
Yeah, that's the issue I've found with conservation parks and national parks in Australia is they just don't have the land management. They're like, oh, we'll just section off this section of land and not do anything to it. Then we have like 2020 bushfires here in the Adelaide Hills, and then the 2016 or whatever it was in Adelaide Hills in the same area, just because there's not that management,
It's funny. I was in Cape York, a community called Pomperau. We were out and we were actually connecting a substance called milk, which is on the ironwood root system. You warm it up and you scrape it off, and it's an adhesive. It works spectacularly at affixing lances into the end of spears, stuff of that nature, making handles for stone tools and whatnot. And as we were digging out the root, he went, okay, slap the tree, said, this is the one, and passed me the shovel. So I'm there shoveling and getting out the root system with a couple of guys, turn around, and he's just decided that the wind's right and it's a good day, and he's just set fire to the bush around us. So we're quickly getting it out and running back to the Land Cruiser, jumping in as the bush is burning. Yeah, come back the next day and it was just awash with animals.
Yeah, that's it. It's just that control burn. It was great for them, for the indigenous people to go hunting, and then the nature had a benefit from it with all the regrowth and burning off old and juvenating all the seedlings, because most Australian native trees and stuff need fire to
activate the seed.
The seeds. So get back to hunting. You said that you were a bit of a anti-hunting growing up.
Yeah, for sure. So I was very anti-hunting, but I also was realistic. And what I had to do was I had to, instead of reverse engineering my ethos to match my feelings, I had to look at my beliefs and then come to terms with it. And it took me several years of training myself with guns and with bows, and also watching dispatch videos, because one of the things that was hardest to come to terms with was the actual killing of an animal, and I wanted to make sure that I could do it as ethically and as quickly as possible.
So how old were you when you were going through this process?
Started in my late teens. I was probably 18, 19, and then I started hunting small game when I was in my early 20s, 20, 21, 22, something like that.
And what's the way to go get your firearms license in the UK? And
it's hard work, that's for sure. Yeah. So to get your firearms license, you need to this process is very similar to anywhere else in the world, really, but obviously they are much more stringent on who gets one. I've got no criminal record whatsoever, but there was still a lengthy process of applying, and then someone coming to your house, having an ex-sergeant who's a firearms officer come to your house and interview you meticulously.
Oh, wow.
And I was actually working at a clay pigeon shoot for some time before I acquired my license. So I was an affiliate of the shoot, and then I started working there. No criminal record. I mean, I was the poster boy for someone who deserves to have a firearms license. Still quite hard work. And yeah.
So what was the first type of animal you obviously did a bit of wing shooting and clay pigeon shooting? Was it birds?
No, actually it was a rabbit. Rabbit was the first thing. I was fortunate enough that the clay pigeon shoot was on one of the largest dairy farms in the region that had a problem with rabbits. So got to shoot a few rabbits, a couple of squirrels, some delicious squirrels.
Squirrels have always interested me. That's what, like, as weird as it sounds, that's something that's high on my list when I go to the States to
100%
to hunt. And because, like, I love rabbit, and I heard it's very similar to rabbit.
Very similar. It's basically an attractive rat, is what it is. When you break it all down, it looks very much like a rat.
Are they red squirrels?
No, they're greys. Reds are highly endangered, and they are competing with grey squirrels, the American greys. And American greys have evolved in a land where they're competing for food resources against, bears and stuff like that. So when they come to the UK, they were released in the Victorian era as, way of them showing off they'd been to the States. And when they started competing with having nothing to compete with other than red squirrels, it was a bad day for the red squirrels.
Talking about squirrels on an earlier podcast with Lana from Hey Sucker, I actually had a message after that episode aired that we actually have a couple of small populations of feral squirrels in Australia.
Is that so?
I was blown away. Apparently, Western Australia, there's some type of African squirrel in small populations over there, and apparently Melbourne had some too, which is it blew my mind. I'm like, come on, like, as much as introduced species are bad for the environment, as a hunter, I'm like, god damn it, I wish they were still around to be able to try.
Yeah, there's a bag limit in the States, I hear. They are so highly sought after for their meat that in some southern states you can only shoot so many. Yeah,
that's just because their game is so regulated and well controlled, so that there's plenty of resource for everyone over there. So what was, when you shot the rabbit, were you shotgun or rifle or air rifle? Shotgun?
So I did a lot of air rifle shooting. It's the one thing that you don't need a license to have in the UK, which is crazy.
It blows my mind that the UK, with how strict they are with gun laws and, even knife, the whole knife thing. Yeah. Don't get me started on that, but yeah, just that you don't need a license for an air rifle over there. Where here, it's you need an license for a gel blaster.
Yeah, anything sub 12 foot-pounds, it's good to go. I mean, I think you've got to be 18 nowadays.
Yeah,
but I can remember being in my early teens and just going and buying a gat gun, which was a pistol that you push into the floor. And that is the energy. The kinetic energy comes from the barrel being compressed.
Wow!
And it fired darts, and the amount of kids that would get shot.
I could imagine. It'd be like Nerf fights with darts.
Everybody knew someone who'd lost an eye from a gat gun. Everybody.
You hear the same with BB guns in the States. So yeah, you took a few rabbits and squirrels and stuff. What was your first medium to large animal?
Well, I didn't actually start. It was all pheasants and pigeons. Probably pigeon decoying was one of my favorite things to do. Setting up a nice pattern and having them come in. There's some of the best flyers for sport, is spectacular, and also they're wonderful eating.
So are they like the street pigeons that we have here, or
so
different?
Rock doves.
Rock dove.
That's the feral pigeon.
Yeah.
These are wood pigeons, so they just browse on berries and stuff.
Are they similar to, say, like our bronze wing pigeons here, or?
They're like a top knot without the cool hairdo. Cool. They're slightly bigger. They're quite a plump bird with a telltale white collar. Bit like your barnecks that you get in the north.
Yeah.
But they've got a white collar instead of a brown one.
Yes, we have the street dove, like not the street dove, the turtleneck dove too, the ringneck.
Sure.
So
yeah,
similar to that.
Similar but a bit bigger.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, pigeon's amazing. It's definitely a very underrated.
Oh,
like even street pigeon, like feral pigeons. I grew up shooting them and cooking them up as a kid.
Oh, really?
I'd set up in the backyard and throw bread and seed out, and they'd land in the backyard. I'd shoot them, pluck them, gut them, and then my grandma, she would cook them up for me in a nice onion gravy in the oven. So
hey, they were imported originally for food. So
squab.
Delicious.
So yeah, your pheasants, is that all kind of? It's probably not the right word, but canned hunt. They breed up the pheasants and let them go.
there's a lot of that going on. That's what it is. I mean, they breed them up in their hundreds and thousands for shoot days, where someone has a flag and dogs, and they run them over a valley, generally, is where there'll be guns on pegs. So there'll be a series of guns, people lined up, and they shoot them overhead. But where they breed them in such high numbers, if you go to places like Surrey, Nebworth, places in the south, the countryside generally, to be honest, there are thousands of pheasants that just wander off the estates,
Awesome. Yeah, a pheasant, I actually don't think I've seen one in a while. When I went to New Zealand a couple of years ago, they had some pheasants in cages that they bred up, and they did very similar thing. They'd have their shooting days for them and let them all go and have all their mates come around and go nuts on them.
Yeah, they're a beautiful eating bird.
Oh, I bet.
People like them gamey, so hung. It's really just because you would naturally have lots during the season. Some would go off, people would like the taste, and it became a sophisticated way of eating them, but they're delicious, just fresh. But I didn't really start hunting big game until I came to Australia.
So you never got into any deer in the UK?
Never got into deer in the UK now.
Because they have an interesting way of going about deer over there. It's all what do you call the farms over there? Like it's not game ranches, but they have I can't even think of the word, but then they've got the game managers of the properties.
So you get the estates. So
the estates,
large estates. That they have a game manager who manages the estate and takes people out. It depends on where you are. Scotland's got a really really great culture for it. Deer stalking, and also in the UK, there are lots of wild populations for sure.
Yeah, there's a few different species over there that I'm on a couple of the UK deer stalking pages and seeing them take the roe deer and the muntjac, the Chinese water deer, and fallow seeker reds. It's cool seeing how they go about it and how they talk about it, because they're more of a native. Like, I know they're probably fallow and reds aren't so much native there, but they've been there for a good couple thousands of years. I'm
pretty sure that red deer are native to the UK, definitely up north. There was an Irish elk. It was massive. There was a skeleton of it, which is close related. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that red deer are endemic. Yeah.
Those Irish elk, I would love to see one of them in person. If I could get a time machine and go back and see one of them, like just seeing them pull the skull up out of the water, like the couple that have been found in some of the locks over there. Or
I mean, can you imagine just the size of the shoulder and neck to carry that? Insane.
You'd need a crew of people just to carry that. So getting onto the bigger game over here was goats, and
predominantly goats. My main source of meat has been goat meat, being that they're so prevalent in the areas that I've been hunting.
And did you have much experience cooking goat meat back in the UK?
Yeah, for sure. So we've got a lot of Caribbeans and people from the Middle East, and it's a very popular choice.
And what was your go-to way of cooking? Curry
goat, for sure. Yeah, curry goat, rice and peas, and a couple of Jamaican festivals. I do like the Caribbean style. Lots of thyme.
Yeah,
delicious.
Yeah, curries are my go-to with some of the larger cuts of deer and especially goat. Just put the whole front shoulder in and just let it go all day and pull it all out. And it's fantastic. It's a very underrated meat. I've found.
100%. Yeah.
Up until recently in Australia, people didn't even know that goat was the most eaten meat in the world.
It's insane the amount of people that comment on my posts and ask me if I'm going to eat it, or that when I say that it was delicious, and they're like, I get private messages saying, "Oh, can you eat them?" That's crazy.
Yeah, the title feral goat, I think, throws people off when you put feral in front. In Australia, I'm not sure if it's the same in the UK, but like feral's used as something as disgusting.
Feral is dirty. Yeah, for sure.
So you went through and got your license, got into hunting, all of that. Come over here. What type of gear do you carry when you're going out?
So I like to try and use minimal kit. At the minute, I've just focused on trad bow. I always just shot a compound bow for the last few years, and made the switch just recently, and I've decided to focus on it. So I've got a PSE Anthem, which is running in at £50.
Very nice.
I'm shooting gold tip trads, triple fletched shield cuts. Cayuga broadheads.
Cayuga pilot cuts.
I like the pilot cuts. Yeah. I do. They're beautiful. They're a few extra bucks, but
are you running the bleeders with them?
I don't use the bleeders now. I just like the double blade. I don't know why. I think they're probably a good idea, but it's nowhere near as much about aesthetics. But I do like them. I think they just look better.
Cayuga. They're a cool looking head. That's for sure. But yeah, Cayuga is a great company in general. They've put lots of man hours behind those heads, and
100%. They come out sharp and they take game, and they're a really strong, resilient head. I've never had a chip, and I've definitely hit some rocks with them, and they're just ready to go.
What's your way of sharpening them?
So I like using a file. Yeah. I just used a single bevel. Obviously, they've got a single bevel, and I always shot old schools before they released the pilot cuts. And just get them in a vise and give them a file. We're good to go.
Very nice, very nice. So, do you run a bladder when you're out? Bino harness?
So I run a Camelback. I've got an Eberly stock Bino harness. Running Leopolds.
Leopolds, very nice.
Got a set of Leopolds, and that's about it. So at the moment I've got some Eberly stock camo, but I just generally use Hunter's Element. It's the main camouflage that I use.
Hunter's Element blends in very well here. I've said it before, I run Huntec. They're both, New Zealand companies. They're very similar in style and pattern and colours, so it blends in. Like even out Flinders Way and Outback SA, it still works pretty well,
Yeah, and I've Terra boots, the Scarpas. I think it's very important.
Do you take many snacks out, and how much water?
Yeah,
especially being in the NT and hunting in pretty dry Outback SA. How much water do you take out with you?
So I generally take 2 litres. I like to take a pump quite often, so I can use water out in the bush if I know I'm going to have a good source around. But generally 2 litres of water and not much else. Knife, a couple of knives, and just rely on my
fixed
skills.
blade type knives?
So one of each. Yep. So I always carry one fixed blade knife, which is either a Mora or where I make knives, so I often take one knife that I've made myself, and a folder. So I've got a Southern Grind Spider Monkey, which is from the States.
Cool. Yeah, I always carry too many knives. I've always loved knives. I collect knives as a kid, but I used them as a tool. I didn't just collect them and then just have them sitting there looking pretty. I'd put them through the test. But I'm a big fan of the scalpel type knives these days.
Yeah, I've used one of those a few times, and I think they're really good. And just recently, because I'd like to start getting some stuff taxidermied, I think it would be a good idea to get myself one of those, because you just get such a nice, precise cut with them.
Yeah, like I said, we'll have to get you to hook up with Dwayne and go check out his setup. And then there's another guy in the Southern Flinders Ranges, Corn Taxidermy or something like that. Southern Flinders Ranges Taxidermy. I can't remember, but his work's impressive too. But yeah, I love taxidermy, but it's an art form. I definitely don't have the patience to do it.
I think I'm going to give it a go. I want to give it a try myself, but I think when I get a nice big fallow, I'm going to want to get it done professionally.
Yeah, definitely. So you do a lot of tanning skins with
heaps. Everything gets tanned pretty much, yeah.
And you and Kai, you use brain mainly?
Sometimes it depends. I mean, if we're going to keep the head, if you don't split the skull open, it's quite hard to get into it. But there is a tan you can produce by mixing egg yolks, olive oil, and natural detergent together.
Yeah, cool.
And it synthesizes natural brain tanning solution, and it works spectacularly. Works as good as brain.
So when you tan the skins, when you're out, say, out Peterborough way, what are you using them for?
Well, it depends. I mean, sometimes we use it for cordage, so we'll cut it into strips and we'll use it for general cordage. We've got a big box full of them because quite often it doesn't get used, and quite often it takes so much time and effort that we don't want to muck them up. But they are great for making shelters, making for shelter skins with shelter coverings with the skins for the survival company that I run.
Awesome.
We're making humpies, traditional humpies, out of the skins to take on courses with us.
That'd be cool to see. I can't wait to see some photos and that of all of that. So how do you find doing all these survival courses with kids, and how do you, the interest level and getting them?
It varies. I mean, it's a wonderful way of getting kids out into nature, giving them the ability to acquire a sense of competence and confidence for sure. Initially, I just wanted a job in survival, and then I found that I was actually really passionate about it. I think it's great and really important.
I bet it would be very rewarding, and the patience you have, like especially doing the tanning, I have a lot of respect for that. I just don't have maybe in a survival situation and I learned how to do it, I would, but just, today's modern age. Sorry if you can hear noise in the back. It's just started pissing down with rain. So getting into hunting, what's your top beginner tip for someone getting into hunting?
I think obviously finding someone who's already in it, someone who can finding permissions really hard, knowing what to do. I mean, there was a lot of trial and error when I first started, a lot of misinformation, a lot of just downright false information.
What type of misinformation were you running into?
Oh, just people talking about correct kit, style, form, technique. Yeah. Going to people when it comes to your bow and trying to get your bow perfectly tuned, you've got to be really careful who you go to. You can spend 6 months to a year practicing with a bow that's got badly tuned arrows, and you're never going to get anywhere. You need to have the kit correct and done by a professional, or at least somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, it's definitely beneficial to go to a pro shop if you can get hold. YouTube videos can only go so far, but something I've found with especially the archery community, they're very, very good at helping and telling you what you need to do, and you just got to find. There's so many great archers in Australia.
And there's just so much to know. I mean, the bow that I've got's really quite light, and I only use Jack Spick's custom strings, and I couldn't work out.
That's what's on that there.
Yeah, he's good at what he does for sure, and I couldn't work out why I was not getting I was really unforgiving when it came to my release, and I was generally having quite a lot of trouble. But the bow's so light that the fast flight was just transferring too much of the energy, so I went back to B55.
Yeah.
And now I'm shooting sweet groups. So.
Man, Jack knows his stuff. I'll get him on the podcast eventually. He's done some work in South Australia, and he's in New South Wales. I'm actually going up to Swan Hill next weekend. So by the time this airs, I would have already been up there. But he's not too far from up there.
Yeah, he's up in Kylie.
Yeah. So it's if I was more organised, I would have tried to catch up with him. But the man's just had him and his partner have just had a baby, so congratulations, Jack, if you ever listen to this, mate. He's loving it from what he's saying. So what are your top 5 items for a beginner?
Top 5 items. Depends on what discipline, obviously. So yeah, if you get your weapon, for sure. I'd highly recommend the standard things. So you need a knife for definite, you need a weapon, be it gun, ammunition.
Yeah.
I think that a GPS is so essential. I run all the time. I can navigate. I can do all of that. But just having that sense of security, the amount of people who get lost when hunting is unbelievable.
Been there. I was quite young, but yeah. The lucky thing this day and age is, most places you go, you can get some type of signal or satellite signal, and you've got all the apps on your phone. Sure. You probably use what do you run for a GPS?
So I've got a Garmin, but I generally just use an app called Avenza.
Yep.
And it's wonderful. For a couple of bucks, you can buy maps for all over Australia.
Cool.
All of the old school ones, some mud maps, It's a really good app, and then you just download the map, puts you on where you stood, and then you just record your tracks.
So it's using maps and satellite together.
It is, yeah.
Cool,
yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I run Onyx. It doesn't give you the maps, but it gives you the satellite, and then you can go put markers and stuff. You know, I'll put where my trail cameras are. I'll stand there and use the satellite to mark all my trail cams and trails. If I find a shed antler, I'll put a mark there, and so when I go back to that area, I can do a couple circles and have a look elsewhere to see if I can find the matching set.
Sure. I've just been hunting for pigs over one area in particular and seeing all of my trips overlaid, so I can see where I've been and how I've stalked.
Yeah, cool.
Really interesting.
What have you found with hunting pigs? I haven't done too much of it. How easy are they to pattern?
I'd say they're the ultimate bow hunting quarry. They're perfect. I mean, their eyesight is terrible. They see bits of brown and bits of red, but generally, their eyesight's really poor. Their hearing is average, and their smell is spectacular. When you get scented, I've been scented from far, and the pigs are happily rooting, and all of a sudden, they will look straight in your direction. They can't see you. I know they can't see you, but they just can pinpoint the location of that breeze perfectly, and they're gone.
It's insane.
Yeah, a little bark and they're away.
So, were you patterning pigs as like just a mob, or did you target individuals?
It depends on location. So this one place in particular was a bullabong, it was a watering hole, and you were pretty sure that in the middle of the day they were going to be either just basking, just having a little root in the water, or they'd be moving in the general vicinity, and there was lots of great cover around. So I'd generally just go up and wish for the best and always find a little spot and stalk.
Did you eat any of the pigs up there?
Yeah, for sure. So in the first time I went pig hunting was with the people of Pomperau. And I went out and we got some pig and we cooked a traditional cup murray. So it's a pit oven, digging out the earth, throwing in some termite mound and making a massive fire. And the termite mound retains the heat really well. And then there's a layer of leaves, some paper bark, the animal, more paper bark, and then it's covered in sand, left for about 8 hours, and it's the most delicious pork you've ever had.
So are they eating anything they get their hands on, or are they quite picky with...
No, they're eating everything they get their hands on. But you're fortunate in certain regions. I mean, if there's a lot of drought and a lot of death, then you know what they're going to be eating is going to be dead animals, and it's a bit rotten. But a lot of places, they're just digging for tubers and eating worms and stuff like that.
Because that seems to be like one of the biggest questions I see on a lot of the hunting pages in Australia. It's like, oh, I've shot this pig in this area. Is it safe to eat? Like, when you're gutting, what are you looking for?
I'm always checking the liver. I'm looking for liver fluke. I'm going to look at the organs generally to see what the state is. As long as you're cooking it properly, you're going to be fine. If you're freezing it beforehand, that's a really good idea. If you aren't sure, freeze it and slow cook it. It's definitely going to be okay. You're not going to get anything from that. Yeah,
cool. Because there's I know that they've put out a couple of warnings for some diseases, not so much the parasites, but the diseases that some of them are carrying through New South Wales and stuff like that. So
I'd always err on the side of caution. If there's a reports around that there's something in the meat, you should be careful then, for sure.
But pretty much your experiences have been...
I've eaten some seriously weird and wonderful stuff, and I've never had anything touch wood.
That you know of yet.
That I know of, yes, yeah.
Lucky we don't really have trichinosis here.
Sure. I am very fortunate, I think.
So, an outer ballpark one, zombie apocalypse weapon. I love my zombie movies, and
for sure. I'd say it's probably going to be the AA-12, the automatic assault shotgun, with a backpack full of 38 drum magazines.
Yeah, perfect.
There's a myriad of ammunition you can use. I know that a close quarter weapon is what people quite often say, but nobody wants to get that close.
Exactly, especially if they watch something like 28 Days Later. That's probably the scariest zombie movie.
And just the idea that you're going to be able to decapitate, it's really hard.
Yeah.
cutting your head off, you know?
Yeah, that's my biggest gripe in movies and zombie shows, and you watch something like The Walking Dead and they shoot a crossbow bolt into the head and it just gets stuck there. It goes in like 4 inches. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, no. Shotgun with lots of rounds would be perfect.
Yeah. The AA-12's been an answer before, and that's I'm sure you probably first found out about it through FPS Russia.
FPS Russia, of course. Yeah.
I think he taught everyone what the AA-12 was. That's
when he pulled that AA-12 out of a barrel of water, I was in love.
When he's dual wielding him and he's just pop.
Crazy stuff.
So what have you forgotten on the hunt?
Oh, everything. There's not a thing that I haven't forgotten at some point or another. I always keep a release when I'm shooting compound. There's always one in the pants of my trousers along with a tab, just in case.
So what type of release are you running?
So I was using a thumb release for a long time. I've used a caliber predominantly. And yeah, just changed to a thumb release just because of the convenience. It's not always on your hand.
Yeah.
I like using a tab for targets, for precision, but again, just it's a pain having it on your hand when you're trying to do stuff day to day. So I'm running a glove.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, for recurve, I run a glove and then I just use a wrist release. It's just convenient. It's always there, and with how I lose shit, it's always there.
Sure.
If I had a thumb release, I could just see myself, just missing my pocket when I go to put it in. Or
100%. I haven't tried those silverbacks, the tension releases. I want a surprise shot, and I try and get that with the thumb release, but I just don't know about. I've never tried one, but the concept seems, I don't know, a little bit too much of a surprise.
I
have more control.
I had a friend with a back tension, and I've spoken about this before, but I drew the bow back and I just could not get it to release. And the longer I was holding it, the more I was stressing. I just had to let down. Like, it just freaked the hell freaked the hell out of me. I just like that, There, I press the the trigger. It's gonna go off and go where I want it to go.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I think I kind of hover over the target as well. I don't just hold it still, and I pick my moment, but I pick my moment and then give myself a bit of a...
Yeah, I can't hold it still. My hands shake and everything. So it's just, hovering over the target and just waiting for my breathing. Like, especially hunting goats and stuff in the hills, you get to the top of the hill on the animal that you're stalking and you're out of breath and you draw back and you're like... And then just, controlling your breathing and getting it. Like, you could be out of breath, but just that couple of seconds controlling your breathing, you shoot, and then you're like back to huffing and puffing. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing like when you do that thing of running around and trying to take some shots. You do that, and it's much harder, and you never actually think, or at least never actually think it's going to be that bad. But after you've done 20 Ks in the hills, you know about it.
Oh, just 20 Ks anywhere. It's taxing on you. And then, being where you were hunting in around Peterborough, it's like dry, rocky
it's
country.
Mountains. The area is called Mungunya, which is from the Aboriginal Mungunya, which is actually means hill place. It's just rocky hills. You're competing with saltbush and not much other cover than that. It's pretty hardcore.
So going on to the whole indigenous and thing with going out with them and learning about the land, what were your expectations of going out there? And because
I tried not to have any.
Yeah,
I tried to just go out with an open mind, and a lot of communities over just the course of a couple of generations or one generation in some cases, have lost a lot of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
There are some places that I went, for instance, when I was up in Wadair. There, I went out with a group of boys. They were between the ages of 12 and 18. One of them was 15. He was a stout lad. He's only a small kid. And he was an absolute weapon with a spear. So we were in the sea, shelled beach, crystal clear water, and there are maybe 1 foot waves just rolling in. And as they're rolling in, you can see a mullet, and you can see that mullet for maybe 0.7 of a second. And he was hitting them consistently in the face with a spear.
That's insane.
Just with his hand, with his finger on the end of it. He'd learnt from his grandfather, and that was one of the main ways they fed themselves. and he was a legend in the camp. He was just the other kids were pretty good. It did start a bit of a war because they all wanted to be as good as him, so they were just constantly practicing and making spears. We were using arnhem bamboo to make the spears and tent pegs that had been sharpened at the end. So like everyone's trying to do different configurations. I want one big one, or I want 7 coming out, and yeah, didn't make a difference. This one kid with a 3-pronged spear.
That's awesome. So what did you know about the indigenous people before heading out there? Like, did you know much of their customs and traditions? And
no, not much. So I knew some of their skill sets because I learnt them, and I mean it's hard to say their customs because it's not like one indigenous.
Yeah,
people, there's 300 active languages.
Yeah.
And, different ways and customs.
That we know of.
Yeah, sure. But I certainly learnt a lot quickly. You know, you go in and I'm doing the whole really gregarious thing of going around and shaking hands, and everyone's like, okay, you need to calm down. It's not the way they do it around here. So.
What was the most exciting thing you learnt through the indigenous people, like bush tucker wise and skill sets? And
I don't know if I can put my finger on one. I've learnt so many wonderful skills and knowledge. The milk, for instance. I mean, just learning about the ironwood. It was such a great wood because it was so hard. And removing the milk, which is the tar-like substance which protects the root system. The traditional owner, he looked at me and said, be careful, you don't burn that wood because women lose their babies. And I was like, what? And I thought it must have been lost in translation. It was his 3rd or 4th language, English. So I just carried on, and one of the other guys came over and said, oh yeah, you can get really sick if you burn the wood. You've got to be really careful, and it causes women to have miscarriages. So it's really dangerous. But I think going for that was really interesting, you know. One is knowing that you can't burn that wood for firewood, which I don't think a lot of people do, which is quite dangerous. But also taking that and making the spear, my first spear, was probably my coolest achievement while I was out there. The shaft was stained with pig's blood, used milk.
That's wicked.
To affix an ironwood lance, and I used a barramundi barb on it as a barb.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So what about bush tucker? What was, say, the strangest thing you got to experience with bush tucker?
I'm gonna definitely have to go for sea turtle eggs. That was
sea turtle
really
eggs.
Intense.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I've tried a lot of stuff, but it was the eggs. It was the biggest one because we were on the beach, and it was this picturesque, spectacular beach, dingo, paw prints, and then there were the sea turtle marks. And I mean, to me, that's David Attenborough. You know, seeing all the little turtles run along and the birds are picking at them. This was like an amazing thing. And then I turn around and there's a guy with a bag full of ping pong balls. And I just looked at Ernie and I was like, what the? And he's like, look, they're not going back in the ground. You're never going to get the experience again. You should try one. So I tried a cooked one, as you would. Everyone's telling me they're better raw, but I thought I'll give it a go, try it cooked. And it was, the white isn't like the white of a chicken egg. It doesn't actually cook, and it's like seawater, and the yolk is really, really creamy. When you cook it, it's disgusting. It's just like an overcooked egg yolk inside of seawater. But when they were raw, it's delicious. It's kind of salty, brined egg yolk.
Yeah, wow. That's cool.
And fortunately, they weren't that developed, so they weren't crunchy. The little embryo was like a little jelly bean.
They weren't like what's that? What's the Asian dish where they eat the
egg, the duck egg with the embryo.
Could you imagine that with that style with
No, I'll pass.
So did you actually get to try turtle
meat?
Had
turtle. Yeah. We had turtle meat. I've eaten snakes. Had a few snakes. I mean, when I was in Jilkmingen, everything was fair play. There was a small girl that had a turtle in her hand, and she was like playing with its face, and my mind just instantly thought it was a pet. And her dad walked past and went, "I told you should have eaten that last night." And she just looked at it and just plonked it on the fire. Just like, it's pretty surreal, but it was delicious.
What about turtle? What's that like?
It's meaty. It's kind of gamey. It's delicious. It's really nice. They just cook them straight in the shells. Yeah. Everything's cooked on the coals, simplest cookers way possible, and it comes in its own bowl. It's pretty delicious. It makes a lovely stew, but it's real nice just cooked on the fire.
Yeah, I'd definitely give it a go. I've had rattlesnake when I was in Mexico, and bullfrogs. Like I went and caught all the big bullfrogs and cooked them up and ate them, and they were awesome. But yeah, there's not much I really wouldn't try. So it's pretty cool that you got to experience all of those bush tuckers and skills and all of that with the indigenous people that not many people in Australia get to do.
Sure, I know. I'm incredibly fortunate and blessed. I mean, and going around with Ernie as well, he's like royalty. So you're instantly cool by association.
Oh, for sure. That's awesome. So, what about a funny hunting story? What's something that's happened?
A funny hunting story. Well, I recently took a charge from a pig up in the NT. That would have been pretty funny for any bystanders, for sure. I was just stalking up. It took me about 4 hours in the 35-degree heat to get up to a group of pigs. There was a really, really big boar, and in this area, they have aerial culls. The AWC comes out and shoots the pigs. And usually, the big ones are the first ones to go. But there were a couple in this mob, but they were out in the total open. So it took me about, 3.5, 4 hours to stalk up to them. Got into the long grass, and next to me, about 3 foot away, I realised there was about 7 or 8 little footballs, and realised I'd been foiled and the piglets run out. Spooked a few of the pigs that were on the flank, and they went to the woods, and I had the choice of making for the tree line and trying to hunt some of those guys that we should have been a lot more rewarding stalk for sure, in the sense of being able to move from cover to cover.
Yeah.
Or I can jump into the billabong and try and go after the big boy. And he was rooting all the way down to his ears and coming up for air every now and then. So I just plopped my shoes off and played red light, green light with the pig. Managed to get within 20 and put one in the bread box, but it was a little bit low. It's got a really big chest cavity, and all the pigs I've shot so far haven't been quite as big as that big old boar. And I did actually inspect it afterwards, and it was single lung just at the bottom, but it didn't seem too concerned. Looked up, saw me, was none too impressed, and went for a charge. I was trying to walk back on clumps of grass, so I didn't fall through up to my waist in the billabong, and fortunately managed to get one in him and put him down, because he was pretty close and he had some really big tusks.
Yeah, that would be pretty trippy. The only pig I've shot with a bow was in Mexico, and I pinwheeled him double shoulder, arrow up to the fletching, and just took his front legs out from underneath him, and he's dropped, and I got up a little bit too excited. I was like, pig has always been like my top animal that I wanted to take with a bow. Like getting into bow hunting, I was just watching people like Bushman Brooks. There's a young guy, young at the time he was youngish, but Casey McCullum, he's a South Australian bow hunter. He's incredible bow hunter. But watching his DVDs of him going up to the NT and shooting pigs, and just my passion grew for him. And then double like pinwheeling this pig, he's dropped down. I'm like, yes, got up too early, and he's just stood back up, both legs out of action, and he's just pushed his way through in the cactus and all this spiky stuff. And I'm like, oh, damn it. So I've followed the blood trail. I've crawled in under all these cactuses and spiky mesquite bushes, and I'm following the blood trail on this pig through all the cactus. And there's javelina running everywhere. And I did not find him, unfortunately. I followed the blood trail for like 200 meters up to the boundary fence, and he just pushed straight through. Too much adrenaline. But that whole time, I'm just with the bow. I'm like, this pig could come at me any second.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the privilege of going out with a traditional owner and his dogs. He had 2 dingo crosses. They were black dingo-looking dogs, and the other one was a bully cross. And that was the tradition. That was the way that they went out and hunted pigs. And we went out, and the dogs went to work, and I had my bow to dispatch, and one would grab the front, one would grab the flank, and one would grab behind. And it was like impossible for me. I just couldn't get a shot. It was really, really bad. And he'd call them off, and then it would run away, and he'd call them back, and it was all a palaver. So yeah, I managed to shoot it and got it in the heart and lung straight away without shooting the dog. Fortunately, I kind of warned it, and it ran away. But yeah, I won't be repeating that again. I don't like shooting bows when the dogs are there.
Yeah, that would be difficult. What's your thoughts on pig hunting with dogs?
It's efficient.
Yeah.
It's a good way of getting it done. I'm more of a kill them softly kind of guy. Ideally, I'd like to never be seen by the quarry. You know, it's just the kind of getting close without being seen is what it's all about for me, really.
That's bow hunting and even rifle hunting. Like you're shooting from a further distance majority of the time, but just getting in that close and just watching them is just awesome. So, what's the most dangerous thing that's happened out on a hunt?
Probably getting knighted when I was a kid. I wouldn't say it was probably the most dangerous as far as the actual element of danger. How I felt, it was perilous.
Yeah.
I was out hunting some squirrels when I first really started hunting. So I was in my early 20s actually, and I got lost, phone died, and I was in the middle of nowhere. I started to freak out a bit, ended up going deeper and deeper into the bush, and twisted my ankle, was essentially what I'd done. But obviously, my mind had gone into prehistoric survival mode. You know, I started to freak out, and as far as I was concerned, I was going to lose my leg, and I was strapped and I was in the middle of nowhere. When I realised that I was going the wrong way, it was the worst.
So that typical English over here.
Pretty much, yeah.
What type of wilderness is there in the UK?
There's some beautiful, beautiful woodland. There's a lot of forests that were originally hunting grounds for the king. That's what a forest is, really, is a hunting reserve. And we've got some really spectacularly diverse, beautiful landscape.
And what type of size? Like, you got lost out in it.
Yeah.
Like, what type of?
I mean, the island's pretty small, all up. But so size-wise, it's not quite as impressive as some of the areas you've got here. But yeah, so like a few hundred acres.
Yeah.
It's often found.
So you got out all right?
Yeah,
Did you have
I was fine. I just got myself together, went to sleep, woke up, and it was all right. Luckily, it was summer. It didn't drop below kind of 10 or 15 in the night time. So
no search party out looking for you the next day.
It's all good. No. Yeah, there were a few concerned bodies back home, but it was all good.
So what's the type of like regulation there for that type of hunting? Do you just have to?
So it depends on obviously the quarry. As long as it's on general license, then you're all good. So things like pigeons, squirrels.
So there is like
corvids.
public land for that type of.
No, you need to have permission.
Private,
You need to be on private land. Sorry, the public land goes to the Wilderness Trust, the Wildlife Trust, Wilderness Trust, and they are predominantly antis. So you've got no chance there.
Yeah, I could imagine. I've seen the crowds that the UK get with the fox hunting.
Yeah, for sure.
There.
Yeah,
You see the big protests and the hunt sabotages.
Oh yeah, it's insane. There's a lot of those hunt saboteur groups that go in, and a lot of them as well, because you're not allowed to hunt with foxes and hounds anymore. They're scent trails.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to bust people doing illegal hunting. But the lengths they go to, I mean, it's crazy when you've got guys that are dragging some old dude off a horse because they feel like because they just don't like him and they don't like where he's from and what he's doing.
Yeah, it's definitely a different one. It's would be a crazy one to experience. I know there's a couple of smallish groups here in South Australia that still hunt fox, like they do the fox hunts like that on horses. Really? Yeah. One of my mates, he's involved, and yeah, it's definitely different the way they do it. They love chasing the foxes down, and it's a bit different here because they're not native.
I mean, it was traditionally the whole community would get together and they would go on the fox hunts. Foxes are devastating.
Yeah,
they really are. I mean, when people are getting up in arms about people killing foxes, they're not people who have ever had to live off of the land. You know, a fox gets into the chicken coop and it's... the fox is obviously just killing everything with the intentions of coming back the next day and hoping that the larva's going to stay full. Yeah.
So what was your experiences coming over here and seeing the whole Mentos of like just feral animals and
I was like a kid
that
in a candy store at first. I mean, it's amazing that we have the ability to go in and hunt all these spectacular animals that are essentially pest species. I mean, if you go to the States, you'll easily spend $500, $1,000 on a tag just for the opportunity to potentially shoot an animal. And you'll save money on the meat for sure, but the fact there's such an abundance of deer species.
Yeah, it's...
You can go out and as long as you've got a 50-pound bow or a reasonable rifle, you can go out in Victoria and get a deer for free and fill the freezer for a year.
Have you shot a deer yet?
No, that's the next thing on my list. So I'm getting really into backpack hunting. Going out, I've got a couple of big ones planned, a couple of 1 to 2 week ventures.
Chasing samba?
Fallow, samba. I'd like to have a go at some rusa as well.
They're cool.
But I've definitely got areas where I know there are rusa, and I've got some private property which has got fallow on it.
That's awesome.
Got myself a climbing tree stand.
Yeah.
Going for a climber. There's not as many trees as I'd like that I get to use it on, but gonna go all in on that as well.
That's awesome. Have you set the tree stand up yet? There's not many tall trees to set it up in there.
Not got to it, so I purchased it, and I've not been in Victoria. I had it sent to Victoria.
Okay, yeah.
And I've not been there yet. Apparently it's heavy. So I went for the Summit Viper, which is the steel-framed one. Because I knew I wasn't going to have that many trees to get to use it on. I didn't want to go all in and spend too much on a tree stand.
I'm definitely keen to see how you go. Like we've discussed, we've had a few messages back and forth over Instagram about tree stands and saddle hunting. It's something I've been very interested in, but it's just that price point here in Australia. We're paying, double, if not triple, what America's paying for.
You just can't get them. I mean, I had to buy mine from Cabela's in the States. I had to order mine in.
Yeah, it's nuts. The saddle hunting is what I've been mostly looking at, just because you've got that freedom. You can pretty much go up in any tree rather than... I know you got the climbing stand, but you have to cut branches and make sure it's all good. From what I understand with the saddle, it's pretty easy to get up and set up. And
I just don't know how I feel about being in a nappy attached to the tree. I just don't know how it would affect my form.
Oh, I'm scared of heights, man. I'll probably be 5 foot off the ground and going, am I high enough yet? Just that deer eye height,
Yeah, I mean, just how you look. If a deer looked up at you, you're just there looking down and it's with your feet dangling.
Yeah, watching the guys in the States, like they rotate around like full 360 around the tree, like they'll hide behind the tree as the deer's coming around, and then they'll just kind of like pop out. And
I saw a guy in Hawaii shooting pigs like that, and he seemed quite nimble up there.
Yeah, I've got some cool properties that would be fun to try out. And I've had other mates that have just put, like a pallet in a tree and then sat up in the pallet, but not many of them have been too successful setting those up. So it's always been like, oh, should I go to the effort and do that? But here in Australia, ground hunting's the way you do it, spot and stalk. Like there's not many people.
Yeah, it's just spending a lot of time as the animal's moving into the wind. You're also moving into the wind. It's a lot of following bums.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, because in South Australia we're so limited to private land, not all the time you can get into the property without, the wind stuffing you up. Like, you have to...
Yeah, not a lot of people use ground blinds either. I don't know a lot of people who put up netting and, sit it out either.
Yeah, I've got one property where I've set up a natural ground blind. I haven't been too lucky in it yet, but it's always a spot where I'll go sit. That's the reason I think I'd like a tree stand, because you're up in the tree and it'll force you to sit longer. Where you're on the ground, you're like, oh, just go see what's over that ridge. Oh, just go see what's in the next hill, what's in the next gully,
Sure.
The temptation's to move is too much. Where if you're in the tree,
I totally feel you, man. Yeah, right there.
and that's probably what screws me up for more hunts than anything is just that impatience of just sitting down and wanting to go over to that next.
I always say it's just me doing an experiment on behaviour. Just think to myself, I wonder how close I could get before I'm foiled. Just gonna see how much they can tell I'm moving when they're in that kind of behavioural pattern. But it just ends in a lot of failure when you keep doing that for too long. I think, if you want to know how to hunt lions traditionally, you go to the Maasai. If you want to know how to be consistently bagging deer, you want to go to the Americans, and they love a climbing tree stand. Generally.
They do. And the thing I've found, like, every deer species is just that slightly bit different. Like, hunting whitetail, they're very agricultural deer. Like, they're around the agricultural field, so they're used to that type of stuff, where fallow, especially in Australia, they're just a bit of a different deer. They're either on farmland or they're in very dense scrub. And you've chased fallow before. So
give them a go.
You know what they're like, chasing them in that dense scrubbish type of stuff, and how switched on they are. And then Samba are just insane, like even more insane. And they're in the high country. I'm saying high country, but I just mean in hilly areas with the steep gullies. We don't have too much of that here, like they do in Victoria. That's for sure.
Yeah, right.
They're a cool animal though. Have you come across any wild Samba?
Yeah,
chased them?
Yeah. A couple. I was out on my own just before just before the floods. Actually, I moved up through New South Wales during the heavy flooding. It was a little while back, but before then, and I came across a couple. Yeah, I've got a little spot that I've discovered.
That's awesome. Did you get honked at?
No.
That's wait till you get honked at. It's just an unreal sound. It goes through you. It goes straight to your bones. Like, it's not like a fallow bark or a goat sneeze. Like the Samba honk, just it's blood curdling. It's a weird sound.
I look forward to it.
What's the most important item you take out when you go out hunting?
A knife.
Knife?
For sure. A cutting tool. I mean, I quite like to veer towards a tomahawk. An axe, when you look at a lot of indigenous people and how they would utilise one, it's probably the ultimate thing to take. But generally, it's a knife, and I think it's just so important to have an edged weapon with you.
What's your go-to survival shape for a blade? What
standard 4-inch blade drop point. Just it works for a reason, is so perfect. I mean, if it comes to more survivally stuff, like one bigger knife is generally a good idea. That can be a one-stop shop, but it's just not the case. It's not what you're gonna. It's cumbersome and it's not fit for purpose. So just like a fixed blade, 4-inch.
What about like the kukuri shape? Do you go much on that?
It's very
as a
good.
Survival.
It's a wonderful survival tool. I mean, there's whole pockets of the world that rely on it day to day for everything, and it's got its merits. But for fine work, it's not the best. It's a machete, isn't it?
It's just that shape of the blade has always attracted me. As soon as I first seen one, I'm like, oh, they're so cool.
yeah, I'm a big fan.
What type of tomahawks are you taking out?
I've actually got I want a Gransford Brook. It's like a wonderful, well reputable knife, but just a small woodsman's axe, a small, just like the size of my forearm to the end of my fingers, shaft with a head on it. I've got a few that I use every now and then, but it's one of those things that I like the idea of taking. But when I actually come to think of it, I don't want something the length of my forearm hanging off my hip that whole time, especially when I'm doing 10, 15 Ks.
Yeah, I've got a little Gerber tomahawk. Yeah, you seen them?
The one,
They're 10 inches long, maybe a bit longer, and I've taken that all around with me. I went to New Zealand with me, went to Mexico with me. Good for a bit of wood collection, and when I found dead heads, cutting the antlers off. I screwed up the blade a little bit, but even butchering, taking ribs off and separating bits and pieces quickly.
Sure.
It's definitely handy.
100%. I mean, the Aboriginal people that I visited, they just did pigs one way when they cut them, and that was up through the belly, around in a Y shape around the tongue, and then up the legs, and they boned the whole thing out and cut through the chest plate and opened that up and did it in no time at all, and predominantly used an axe. They did have a knife they used for some bits, but they were well versed at just doing everything with an axe.
What was their favourite cuts when it came to pigs?
It was all just slow cooked.
Yeah.
It was all just a free-for-all.
Were they slow cooking organ meats and stuff as well?
Yeah, no, not so much. We just grallocked it. I mean, it was a hot day, and we just were getting it in the ground. Everything is utilised generally, but we were saving the blood to make the spears, and there was lots going on at the time.
So you mentioned that before, the blood on the spear handle. What's that for? It's
purpose? Just like weathering it. It just conditions it beautifully so it absorbs into the wood. It makes it waterproof. It also colours it, so you can add ash to the blood and make it black, or you can have it red just by obviously having the natural colour of the blood. That's
cool. That's cool. That's not like you said it before and it didn't really sink in until you said it just then, and it's, oh, what's the purpose for that? How do you see the public views on hunters?
I think the most vocal members of the public are not a fair representation of the public's view. I think what you see too much is people commenting on the traditional grip and grin photos in a really negative way. And I think generally most of the public are very understanding as long as your approach is representative of the hunting community at large. And by that I mean, if you present yourself in a manner which is respectful and also understanding of the fact that you've got someone for whatever reason who disagrees with you, and that you need to find common ground. If you go in and you're insulting and negative, you're only going to get that back.
So what are your views on grip and grins?
I think they're wonderful. So the perspective of the person who's in that picture, he's trained for years. He's stalked on many different occasions. He's pitting himself not against the animal. The idea is not the killing. The killing is an aspect of it, and it does create that really complex feeling when you do actually harvest something. Yeah. But the competition is with millions of years of evolution. That animal has been evolving to not be killed by predators, and you are a predator. It's your place in the animal kingdom. You're fulfilling it. You manage to harvest that animal. You've just fed yourself. You've just acquired prestige for your community. It's no different than a Maasai warrior goes and kills a lion and wears a string of lion's teeth around his neck. It's not as palatable, but that's what they're seeing. All the person who is against it, who has a problem with it, sees is something dead and someone enjoying it, and that's it. And they can't see past their own perspective and also their own prejudice against that person and his ilk.
That's something that I've thought of, and you see people comment, post tasteful trophy photo, like grip and grin trophy photos, whatever you want to call them. Like I'm a massive fan of grip and grins just because it's a memory for myself, and I can share with my friends and my family and show my kids what I've experienced, and hopefully they'll experience those things as well. But the anti-hunter, it's not that they're upset that it's a tasteful trophy photo. They just see the dead animal and they get upset that there's a dead animal. They don't care if we've taken our time to take the blood out of it or put the tongue back in the mouth. Like, you see a lot of people like, oh, why did you leave the arrow in it? Like, yes, we put our own ethics and our own views on that type of stuff, but the hardcore anti-hunting people, they just see the dead animal. They don't see whether it's tasteful or not.
And there are so many hunters as well that go out of their way to look as if they're about to burst into tears. Yeah. They create these, put their hand on it and they bow their heads and they look like they're really emotionally distraught, like they didn't want to do it, and it just is a bit contrived when I see that, and that person is elated at what's happened and it's okay.
Yeah, look, I've been guilty. I've taken those photos,
Yes.
when I did the ABC interview on feral cat hunting, I went into that, like, I do pat the animal and say thank you. I take a minute.
Oh, I do. Yeah, sure.
Appreciate how amazing the animal is. They're all slightly different and different patterns, and you're always very appreciative. So how would you change the public views on hunting overall?
I think the only way to change public view is through education. It's unfortunate that we're moving further and further away from it culturally. I mean, if you go back not that long ago, I mean, even in the UK, people would sell game. Hunters would go into the local pub and sell game, and it was something that was openly talked about and accepted. And I think we're moving slightly more in that direction. I think sustainability and the way that things are treated in battery farms and stuff of that nature is pushing people further that way. It's funny, actually, a lot of vegans that I speak to aren't the ones who are giving people the most grief. It's actually meat eaters.
Yeah.
It just have grown up on Disney. The only animals they've ever met are their pet cats and dogs and the birds in their window, and they don't understand it, don't want to, and that's going to be really hard to educate. But most of the population, I think the way you just do it is by being a good ambassador.
How have you found doing all this survival stuff and being from the UK yourself? Like, how have people taken to you hunting and posting, because you probably would have went to school with people you're still friends with now, and they're like, oh, you've shot a goat, or you've shot this, you've shot that.
I've had a few people who have looked me up, or I've messaged from my Instagram account, and I've not got a response, and I'm pretty sure it's because they've looked at my photos for sure. But generally, people are really understanding, especially when you hunt with a bow.
Yeah.
Because knowing that I've got access to guns, everyone who knows me knows that I used to shoot. So the fact that I choose to limit myself to a struggle stick, there's obviously more in it. You're not just doing it for the joy of killing something. And it's more, it's a bit more whistling into the wind and being like, the kind of people that they don't mind hunting, more traditionally living people. It's hunting in that manner. And I think that's one great way of getting your foot in the door, so to speak, is explaining the ethos and explaining why and how.
Now, are you allowed to bow hunt in the UK?
Very much not, no.
Yeah, I figured that. I know there's a couple of the countries that allow you to, Bulgaria and a couple of other countries, but it seems to be
in France, Hungary, there's quite a rich culture of it that still exists. It was 1962 or 64, I can't remember, that it just was passed that for no real reason apart from some people claiming that it was unhumane, and they just banned it.
Yeah, straight
up banned it, and it's never been readdressed. And I contacted some people. There's a bow hunting association of the UK that I contacted about it to try and do something, and they just didn't get back to me at all.
That's a shame.
Yeah, and it would be a massive struggle because we don't have it culturally at all, and a lot of the foundation of the hunting community in the UK, and the reason why it's still thriving today, is the nobility. Is the upper classes that love their driven shoots, they love their deer stalks, and they like their pigeon shooting and their fox hunting, but it's a little bit too primitive for them, I think, going back to the old bow and arrow.
It's funny because bow hunting is such a rich in the English history, like, and all through Europe, like, you look at Robin Hood, like, everyone thought he was stealing money, like, all the stories that we've grown up with, he was stealing money and giving it to the poor from the rich, but apparently the real story was he was shooting deer and then feeding people. I
hear that it did evolve into... No, apparently he did start robbing, and the reason he was giving it to the poor is because he was hiding out in villages, and the way of stopping them from trying to claim the bounty was by giving it to them, But a lot of people, you were vilified. So you couldn't even own a sight hound. as a poor person. That's like where lurchers came along. Lurcher is to steal. It's a French word, and they used to throw their working dogs in with the sight hands so they could get a sight hand of sorts for themselves. But yeah, it was crazy regulated. No one could shoot a deer but the king, and you'd end up. The punishment was joining the deer.
Yeah, that's something I always heard when I was first getting into deer hunting. Like everyone that I spoke to, that's in Australia from the UK. Oh no, you can't shoot deer in the UK. You can't shoot them. They're the queen's animal, the king's animal. Rah rah rah. And yeah, it wasn't until I got more and more into it. I'm like, actually no, you can hunt deer in the UK. It's
they're fine to hunt.
Yeah,
they're in abundance, and they've got no natural predators, so they need culling in a big way.
Yeah, definitely. You see the deer through the parklands. What's that main park in? Is it London where all the big fallow run through and they're all?
Oh, there's plenty. I spent a lot of time in Nebworth, which is a large estate just outside, and it was teeming with muntjac. There were so many, and I was very tempted because I used to shoot every single day, and I knew I was stalking them, and I knew where they were bedding down. I mean, I used to hide up in the tree and just wait for dawn to break and see them coming out, and just to know was enough.
They're a cool little deer. Like, what would you say? Seeing it in person, are they a bit smaller than a Labrador, or about the same size as a Labrador?
A bit bigger than a Labrador.
Yeah.
I suppose they're about foot and a half tall. They're a really small deer, and they don't have a fixed pattern. They don't move in herds. They don't have a fixed breeding period. They don't really do the rut. They just they breed erratically, and they live individually or in small groups, small pairs.
Because they're an introduced species to the UK.
I believe so.
Yeah,
yes.
Cool. What about top 5 dream animals?
Oh, the top 5. We were talking earlier on about blueberry black bears.
Yeah.
Black bears, the old American woodsmen used to hunt the deer for their pelts and hunt the bears for their meat. So, semi-dangerous game. It would be spectacular to hunt the black bears in generally.
It's funny that black bear would have to be the most popular answer out of all the people. And I think Meat Eater has a massive, you talking about the blueberry black bear, like that's that Meat Eater episode, that most people got exposed to in that first couple.
I've not seen many episodes of Meat Eater.
Wow,
actually.
that's surprising. He shoots this bear eating blackberries, and then he renders down the fat and starts cooking the meat chunks in the rendered down blueberry fat, and it's got like a purplish tinge to the.
I should look up some more. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things. I saw a couple of episodes, and it just eluded me in that show. But I should check it out. It's very popular now, but when I first started watching it, like not many people knew about it, and you had the first couple seasons, like you had to go onto a website and you paid for the season, and then you downloaded the episodes on there. It was cool. Back in the day, how long ago was that?
They probably started getting somewhat popular probably about 5-6 years ago, so probably 7-8 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't know how long Renella's been around. Yeah.
He's been around a long time. I started listening to his podcast when it first started coming out, and I think that's over 300-ish episodes now. So
wow. So other than that, I suppose it's got to be one of the big ones. Probably Cape buffalo.
Yeah.
With a bow. I mean, would be ideal. Just of how hardy. Second biggest killer of people in Africa. It's
trad bow or compound?
Let's not go crazy. Yeah. No, I mean their ribs lattice, don't they? They overlap. You've really got a punch to get through those guys.
They're an incredible animal. Black Death. They're nastier than our water buffalo. You've seen a couple of them. I've only seen a few in the distance when I went on a croc tour up in the NT, but yeah, the Cape buffalo would just be insane.
Next level. Yeah, and their heads as well. Their horns are just crazy. Come out of the middle. They're built for chasing off lions and stuff. Different beast.
So you seem to like that dangerous aspect, you know. You've picked black bear and
I do
black death.
I do like an exciting hunt for sure. I suppose third would be red stag in Scotland.
Yeah,
you know, traditional, wearing tweed, flat cap, going all in, with a nice Scottish gentleman in his early 70s.
Yeah,
you know, just whiskey, and he's got a stick with a stag antler on top. I think just go full trad on that one.
That's cool. That'd be awesome.
That would be cool. America. I really want to do a pack horse hunt. So moose in the Yukon.
Yep.
Going up where it's untouched and pristine. The idea of animals that have never seen humans before is just like, you know, definitely living in total wilderness, and going out with horses is a big dream trip for sure.
Yeah, that last guest that I had on that I was telling you about, so it hasn't dropped yet, but by the time this episode, it would have been the last one. He did a caribou hunt, a fly-in caribou hunt, wow. And he had to borrow a wheelchair from his friend that had a thicker wheel on it, because he's got spina bifida, and you know he hunts out of a wheelchair, so he was hunting caribou out of the wheelchair up there, which is just incredible. And he said the landscapes up that way is just insane. He was saying that he's seen a grizz or brown bear at about 600-700 yards, and they were watching it, but they couldn't shoot it. He had a tag for it, but because when you fly in, you're not allowed to hunt for like 24 hours or 12 hours.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah.
So they were watching it, but they didn't get to see another one again. So
crazy.
He said it was just incredible. He said they are huge animals, the brown bears.
Yeah, well, biggest land predator. I mean, they're not to be trifled with. I mean, would I hunt a brown bear? I hear they're not that delicious. I hear they're not great. I mean, I would, if it was for conservation purposes.
The money goes into conservation, you know,
100%,
Pitson and
100%.
Robertson and all of that type of stuff. So,
and I'd love to give it a try. I'd have to try it, you know, see how it tastes.
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, you've tried some crazy stuff here, so why not try some crazy stuff over there? Sure. Yeah, Evan was saying that mountain lion or cougar is incredible. You know, I've always heard it tastes like pork, and he confirmed that and said it's really good. So
I hear it's incredibly hard to get on them without dogs, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you can live around them and never see them. They're just really elusive.
Would you bow hunt one from dogs where they've bowed it in a tree and then you shoot it out the tree with a bow?
Do you know what? I think that style of hunting is more about the dogs than it is about the hunting. Yeah. The actual shooting something in a tree, it just doesn't sit well with me.
Or would you just bail it and then take some photos and pull the dogs off?
If I was going to do it, I'd rather try my best at trying to get up on one without the dogs. I don't know, maybe just one dog, like a scent dog, that isn't just trying to chase it up a tree.
Yeah. It'd be, definitely a crazy animal. Adam Greentree, he shot one a few years back, and I'm pretty sure he shot it off the dogs out of a tree. But you know, that typical mountain lion grip and grin where they're bear hugging it with the.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not judging, to each their own, but it's just not my cup of tea, I don't think.
Yeah, I just think from what I've heard, it's just almost impossible to.
It is, yeah, from what I've heard too.
They're just a crazy, crazy animal, and it's like that Bear Grease podcast I was telling you about earlier. They talk about jaguars in the US and the jaguar hunters and the guys that go insane. Chase them in the.
Yeah, I've seen those jaguars hunt caimans. They do not mess around.
Oh, they're an insane animal. Same with like the leopards in Africa. A few years ago, I got invited to go on a leopard hunt, and I'm just like, I'm a broke-ass bricklaying apprentice. I don't have the money to go do that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what the trophy fee is for one of those.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. They were telling me it in the whatever the African currency is, but yeah, it was insane. Like you sit in a blind at night, and they just have bait hanging up in a tree, and pretty much you turn the light on, or nowadays it's probably mostly thermals and night vision and that, and they shoot them that way, because otherwise you just can't get onto them.
Of course, yeah.
It's nuts.
Where am I at? Was that?
So what is hunting to you? Oh, so you've got one left, I reckon.
I've got one left.
You got one left.
I slipped my mind. I had one on the tip of my tongue a second ago. Oh, kudu in Africa.
Kudu, yeah.
Kudu in Africa. I don't know what it is about the kudu. It's just from when I first started hunting, I saw something. David Attenborough. He was with the African persistence hunters, and Gembe the runner chased one down and sprinkled the sand over its body and did all the prayers and stuff, and it just makes the hair on my head tingle when I think about it. So just for that reason, I think.
Yeah, they're really, really pretty. My favourite African plains game would be the Inyala. They're very similar looking to the kudu, but they've just got more of a painted,
bit more beautiful.
Yeah. I always pronounced it Nyala, but I got corrected on one of my earlier podcasts. That's Inyala, or however you pronounce it. Like I said before, I'm dyslexic, so I read it and then I say it how it is, or I stuff it up. So, what is hunting to you?
It is a means of acquiring food that's steeped in history. It's so much more than just a practice. It's something you can't put your finger on. I mean, it's like trying to explain to somebody why you stare into the fire.
Yeah.
When you look at the fire, you're looking through the eyes of your ancestors. There are emotions that you can't comprehend, which are locked in your DNA, and it's the same feeling that you get when you harvest your own food, when you share that food with your loved ones. You can't put it into words, and it's something that's truly within us.
That's probably the best answer to that question that I've like how you've said it and how you've related to it. I feel exactly the same. Like, you're sitting around the campfire and you're just staring into those flames dancing, like you're looking at the coals and the embers and then the flames dancing around that. You got that bright red glow and then the orange top and just dancing around. But yeah, that natural feeling you get when you're hunting and fishing, it
taps into something which
that's deep.
It just goes right to your core, and you just know that it's right. It's just nothing tastes like it. It just doesn't. You can't put it into words.
And then when you mix the hunt with the fire, it's just it's that next level.
As the reds of as the sun sets, and you've just had a big feed that you've just hunted yourself. The sun setting, the red of the sky, just you feel so complete in a way that no amount of money or career or anything is going to tap into. I'm not saying it's greater. I'm just saying it's different. It's just standalone. It's a flavor of life all on its own.
Yeah, you feel grounded. Like that's just you feel at one with everything around you.
100%.
And that's a really, really incredible answer. That's deep. I'll be thinking about that over the next the next couple of weeks and even longer. I reckon that's got me almost speechless. How would you like to be remembered?
I think. I don't know. I think some sort of legacy is wonderful. I'd like to be remembered. I don't know. I've not put much thought into it. As long as I'm remembered and I'm remembered for living well, I'm happy with that.
You're already going down that path, so you've had some incredible experiences, and you and Kai just seem to be living the life when it comes to that natural.
I'm very fortunate and very lucky.
You guys are
spectacular, and she's an absolute weapon as well. This is a wonderful partner.
Yeah, I've only met her the couple times you guys have dropped in when you dropped in the goat skull.
Yeah,
I just get a message from Kai on Instagram. Hey, you're in Adelaide, right? Do you have room to put a goat heads in your freezer? We're off here, and I really want to preserve it, but I don't have anywhere to store it. Yeah, no worries. I got a deep chest freezer. Drop in.
Thanks for that, buddy. We were just heading off. We needed the fridge space for actual food, and yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, all good. Hopefully, I can get Kai on here when she's one day when she's free.
Absolutely,
She's
yeah.
just, I've never met someone so busy. She's like,
She's certainly a busy lady, that's for sure.
What's she done this year? She's been to the States multiple times. I think she's been to most states in.
Yeah, she just been on a book tour. She's just released a complete survival guide, which is truly wonderful.
Yeah, I've been meaning to get a copy of that. She's done a book tour.
Yeah,
with that through the States. So
and I can confirm
cool.
it is bang on. I mean, there's so many books out there. There's so many reference books and survival books as far as just giving you diagrams and stories and stuff, and they don't quite hit the mark, most of them, I don't feel.
What's it called and where can people find it?
It is called Survive, and it's just been released in the States, and the Australian book launch is coming up in the beginning of November.
Awesome. So I can't even remember I'm not much of a reader, so I don't go to many many bookstores, but QBD will... Do you know if it will be available?
You can buy it online in a
Cool.
lot of major book suppliers. I think it's available at furnaux.com, Kai's website.
So how do you pronounce her last name? I've always struggled.
It's furnaux.
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 Because it's, like I said, with my dyslexia, looking at it, it's just like, I'm not even going to attempt that.
Yeah, it's French, and there's an X on the end.
Yeah.
That's a funny one.
But awesome. I really appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you on social media?
I only have Instagram, and it's Calem O'Grady.
It's awesome. Awesome Instagram page.
Thanks,
that's for sure.
I've got to keep up on it. It's a relatively new one. Just like sharing my exploits.
It's hard to keep up on when you're remote so much.
Yeah.
So. But I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
It's been in the works for a while. We do really need to work out a hunting trip together.
For sure.
Like I said, you're always welcome when you're around. You and Kai. But you're just both of you are so damn busy. It's like, I see you're in Adelaide, and it's like, we're off to New South Wales, or we're off to Queensland, or Kai's going to the States, and I'm going to Darwin.
Yeah, we should get a little group together. I've been talking to Little Axe, Ant.
Yep.
Little Axe. We've been hunting before, but we want to go and do a slightly bigger one somewhere in Vic, maybe around the rut. We'll have to chat.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm off to New Zealand this coming rut, unfortunately, so that I'll be pretty busy there. But whenever you're in South Australia and we can work out a weekend, I've got the properties, and you're more than welcome to tag along, and we'll try and get that deer.
Sounds good. Perfect.
Easy, man. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening. Please find us on our social medias, Instagram at Hunting Connection Podcast, Facebook at Hunting Connection Podcast, and Twitter at Hunting Connect. Also, please subscribe on whatever podcast app you're listening on. Rate, review, share with your friends and your family. If you really enjoyed an episode, just send it to a couple mates, or when you're listening, screenshot that you're listening and tag us in it. It helps us grow, because even if one of your friends or family start listening, it's an extra listener. So thank you very much for listening, and have a good one. I hope you enjoyed listening.